presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, Gary Johnson. Gary, good to have you on today, sir.
Brian, it's great to be on with you.
Fellow Libertarian I am, and I've been trying to explain to people why it is a much better philosophy for the future of America. I had a conversation with a Kennedy Democrat from back in the day. He's more my father's age the other day, and he said something about, well, the Democratic Party needs to get back to Kennedy Democrats. I said, you know what could save this country? I said, Kennedy Democrats and Libertarian Republicans, maybe along the lines of Barry Goldwater. Then we might be able to contract the size and scope of government and save this country from itself. What say you, Gary Johnson?
Well, Brian, I would just argue that libertarians really do grab from Democrats that really care about civil liberties in a big way. So let's repeal the Patriot Act. Let's get out of Afghanistan, bring the troops home immediately. Let's not bomb Iran. Let's bring about marriage equality. Let's end the drug wars. Those typically would be Democrat issues that aren't being addressed. So I think libertarians do better when it comes to civil liberties, and I think libertarians do better when it comes to dollars and cents. Let's balance the federal budget now. If we don't, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of a monetary collapse, and that's going to be horrible.
And that's the obligation of the citizenry to rise up. There are many balanced budget groups out there. I happen to be a big fan of We Demand a BalanceBudget.com, a founding member I am. But that would be the way for the citizens to do what our elected officials do not have the spine to do, and that's rein in their own ridiculous spending. I mean, do we have any opportunity here to really actually get something like that done, Gary Johnson?
Well, that would be voting for Gary Johnson as the Libertarian candidate who's going to come at Democrats hard from the left, being better on civil liberties than Obama, crushing Obama on dollars and cents. That's Gary Johnson coming at the Republicans hard from the right, crushing Romney on civil liberties and being a whole lot better than Romney on dollars and cents. Let's balance the federal budget now. A monetary collapse. You probably talk about it.
Yes.
You probably talk about it, Brian. I mean, the monetary collapse is when a can of Coke costs $100. And guess what? It quickly gets to $100, and it just goes right through $100 to where no amount of money buys a can of Coke because money is worthless. And the shelves are empty because everybody's figured this out, and there's been a run on everything that there is on the shelves, so there's nothing to buy. And this happened in Russia, and this is the consequence of continuing to borrow and print money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar. There are ramifications to doing that.
And the funny thing is, this is, and it's like, again, Nero fiddling while Rome burns. We have politicians asking to double down on the same old when they refuse to look at the modern day illustrations of what's the collapse that socialism and excess spending brings around. Greece, Italy, do we need to go through the whole list? But you also have historic examples in the form of the Weimar Republic as well as Zimbabwe. I mean, this has happened before. Monetizing the debt, balloons inflation, it devalues the dollar, and it makes everyone impoverished.
And that's the message here is that we have to balance the federal budget. So that means reforming the entitlements. That means that we have to reduce spending for Medicare by 43%. And for those that fall off their chair when they hear that, look, I think the states can deliver health care to the poor and those over 65, and that we can do this in the context of not spending more money than what we take in. But if we don't do it, the alternative is no health care. The alternative is a dollar that doesn't buy anything.
Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson, along those lines, I guess the idea of continuing to spend on social welfare programs on a federal level is preposterous. I presume you saw the Cato Institute study about where poverty is now compared to 1966 when Johnson declared his war on poverty. Nothing's changed in spite of trillions of dollars being thrown at the problem.
Nothing has changed, and if we in our benevolence choose to, and I think we do. I think we really do care about those that are truly in need. And as having been governor of New Mexico for 8 years, I think government perhaps is the only entity that is able to deliver to those truly in need. But the notion of truly in need, we've gone way over the line with regard to those truly in need. And again, if we don't address this, now, and this is mutual sacrifice. If we don't fix our sinking ship, we're all going to go down together. We've got to all fix this together. This is mutual sacrifice on all of our parts.
Governor, I guess another social program or entitlement program, however you want to characterize it, if I call it social program, I get a lot of seniors that get angry with me. I paid into Social Security my entire life, to which I say, okay, how much will you be taking out over the life of your life compared to what you put in? But Social Security, whether you like it or not, is something that also, it doesn't have any money in the program. All that money has been spent, replaced by, obligations from the federal government to its people. But there isn't a guarantee it's coming. What would Gary Johnson, president, do to help fix Social Security, which is going to run out of money shortly?
Well, Social Security is a problem that is pale in comparison to Medicare. Social Security is absolutely fixable. And by fixable, it's a system that needs to take in more money than what it pays out. To do that, you can raise the retirement age. You can have a means testing that would be very fair. You talk about more money being paid in or less money paid in than what gets paid out, and given a certain amount of income. There is a way to do a means testing that would be absolutely fair. And I am proposing to do away with the entire federal tax system. I am advocating the fair tax. If we had the fair tax, there would be no more withholdings taken out of your payroll check. Social Security would come out of the revenue from the fair tax. So no more paying into Social Security, no more employer match to your Social Security. Like I say, that would come out of the proceeds of the fair tax. So Social Security, imminently fixable.
Eminently fixable, says presidential candidate Gary Johnson. Can you stick around? I got plenty more questions for you, sir.
Yeah, great.
You broke down the libertarian philosophy you carry early at the outset of the discussion, sir, and wanted to just run by you my theory, being a fellow libertarian. I believe that no one stirs the pot within the Republican Party and whatever philosophy it is currently follows more than the left when it comes to social issues. I believe they fear more than anyone the socialist leftist libertarian philosophy because, for example, if you look at Obamacare, which of course fate will be determined today, that represented the first real, true intrusion that you could grab a hold of and identify into religious liberty. If the left can intrude into religious liberty, then folks on the right who want to seek to perpetuate their religion can also step back and go, whoa, 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 if they can do it, and wait a minute, we're doing it, and now I know how those other guys feel. Maybe we should, like the government was set up in true Jeffersonian liberality, just let everyone be.
I hear you.
I mean, do you agree with that the left fears libertarian philosophy?
I don't know if I buy into that so much as just that they just don't understand it. They don't understand. The left doesn't understand that libertarians are really, really strong on civil liberties. That it's about choice for everything. And then the right, I don't think, really understands that. And first of all, I think the right values civil liberties. I think they absolutely do. But the right, more than the left, values dollars and cents.
Yes.
And the fact that we have to live within our means, and that a libertarian professes dollars and cents, in this case, balancing the federal budget. So it's the best of both worlds. It's the notion that most of us in this country are fiscally responsible and socially accepting. That's most of us. I'm in that category.
And I guess dollars and cents are factual. I mean, 2 + 2 always equals 4, unless, of course, maybe you're with the Fed. But in the final, I mean, that's how people grasp that. People have their own household, Republican, conservative, independent, liberal. You've got a household. You understand money coming in, money going out, and that you don't have the ability to print up as much money as you want. These are all rational concepts that the left cannot argue with. So what you have, though, and I believe this is dividing the Republican Party, is the social element. You think of abortion, gay marriage is a big one, and I get in this argument all the time. A religious group, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, if you're in a particular religion, you get to define what marriage means within your own doctrine and dogma. If a state wants to honor up two people getting married that you don't necessarily believe in, that doesn't change your religion.
Oh, I completely agree. And I wanted to also touch on 2+2. Mitt Romney is saying we need to balance the budget, but we need to spend more money on the military. We need to spend more money on the military, and we need to hold Medicare intact. Well, I finished the second grade, and the mathematics that went along with finishing the second grade, and it doesn't add up. So Republicans have to really be holding their nose, and I don't want to point at Mitt Romney as holding their nose, but holding their nose at politicians that are representing them that are not following through with the most basic, with just common sense. It's gone out the window.
Well, they're not being truthful, are they? If you can say we can continue, and this happens from the left all the time, they worry seniors to death. All those evil Republicans are going to take everything away from you. Medicare is not going to exist as you know it today. Well, it can't. And the predicate for all this is Medicare, and then at some point Social Security cannot exist as it exists today. It is going to bankrupt our country. Honesty, I suppose, would be a better practice.
And you touch on the basis of all evil, which are politicians that try and scare us when it comes. And by the way, the only way that you can survive is to elect me, because I'm going to save you from illegal. I'm going to save you from drugs. I'm going to save you from getting old and dying on the street. I'm going to make sure you have health care. Let's boot out the illegal immigrants and terrorism. There is no end to the wars that we will fight, bringing terrorism to an end. And that's the root of all evil, of politicians spreading these kinds of dogma that really this country is about liberty and freedom and the personal responsibility that goes along with that.
Indeed. And foreign policy is one that I think is the most talked about. And if you talk to any Republican, they're like, well, I don't have any problem necessarily with libertarians. I do understand that they believe in concepts of freedom that we typically embrace and personal choice and responsibility. But, man, they scare me on foreign policy. I heard you say at the outset, Gary Johnson, that, well, you pull us out of Afghanistan and we would disengage us in certain areas in an effort to shore up our military budgets, I presume, but also to get out of the interventionist strategy we've had for so long. Why is that a good idea for America, Gary?
Well, the unintended consequence that goes along with everything it is that we do. We take out Iraq. Iraq is Iran's only concern. Now, this is why we're potentially dealing with Iran. And by the way, I do not believe that Iran poses a military threat currently, but we should be vigilant to that military threat. If we bomb Iran tomorrow, we're going to find ourselves in a 2-year bombing maintenance program, and we're going to end up making 100 million more enemies to this country than we otherwise would have had. There is an unintended consequence to everything it is that we do. We take out Gaddafi, and Gaddafi's military goes to Mali, where they take out a democracy. So when it comes to what we're doing in Libya, we're down one democracy. And in Libya, there's just going to be a new authoritarian dictatorship that takes over from the old. Who's to say it's better than the old? But this is what we constantly engage in. So we need to defend ourselves against attack. And we've gone way over the line here. I think the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we're borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we spend. We have to balance the federal budget. By cutting the military 43%, we're taking the military back to spending levels of 2003. Doesn't sound like the end of the world to me.
Gary, and I guess I have to point out that in our military policy, it's always perplexing to me, and perhaps you have a comment or two on this. We pick and choose, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the picking and choosing. We'll bomb Libya, but we won't bomb Syria. We'll bomb Libya on the predicate that they're killing their own people. Syria, quite clearly, killing its own people, but we won't bomb them. Oh, no. And maybe this has connection with the monetary problems we're facing, because I know we must borrow our enemies. Like, for example, China, which has traditionally been an enemy and I think ideologically still is. We need to borrow from them in order to keep afloat our reckless overspending here. That impacts foreign policy, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and I just refuse to believe that, first of all, of the dollar that's being spent worldwide on military spending, we're spending over 50 cents of that dollar, and we're 5% of the world's population. China, by contrast, is spending 9 cents, which I've done some math on the back of a napkin. We may be, the interest that we're paying China may pay for their military for the year. It's close. I refuse to believe that China is a threat. Should we be vigilant to that? But you know what? Being a trading partner with China, that's the best sort of alliance of all. I refuse to accept that China is loaning us money and is their biggest trading partner, and that they plan on somehow bombing us. I refuse to accept that.
Well, I'm just saying it puts us in an awkward position when it comes to diplomatic relations in other areas of the world. China has some interest. I know Russia has some interest in Syria and perhaps keeping the regime in place because of oil and the like. Well,
yeah, you're right on. And then let's look at Egypt for a second. Mubarak, here it is. Admittedly, this guy is horrible, and we have been supporting this guy. Well, you know, we halfway support his getting out of office, and now the military has taken over in Egypt. So unintended consequence with regard to everything it is that we seem to do militarily.
Talking with Gary Johnson, presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party for President of the United States of America. Gary, why don't you give folks information on where they can find out more about you and your fundraiser, or your event that's coming up in Columbus?
Yeah, so we're going to be at a number of meet and greets, and to find out, get online, GaryJohnson2012.com. It will actually lay out my itinerary in Ohio, and I'm looking forward to being there. I do have some interest in, believe it or not, in some real estate in Ohio that I have had for a long, long time, and they've worked out really well. So I guess I'm bound to Ohio and Ohio doing well.
Well, and as are all we in the tri-state, we, of course, are connected together, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, along with the rest of the nation, and we all hope for the best for everybody. And I think the best thing we can do is, at minimum, whether or not it's vote for Gary Johnson or Mitt Romney, but at minimum, do not vote for Barack Obama. Am I correct on that one, Gary?
Well, in the polls that have been done, I have taken from more votes from Obama in some polls, and I've taken more votes from Romney in others. So I'd like to think that libertarians are the best of both worlds, best of civil liberties when it comes to Democrats, best when it comes to dollars and cents when it comes to Republicans. Why not? Why not get a libertarian president that's going to challenge and work with Congress to right our civil liberties and to balance the federal budget?
Gary Johnson stepping up to the plate, appearing on the 55KRC Morning Show. Great talking with you. I wish you the best on the campaign, and keep spreading the philosophy. I am certain that at some point it is going to be the dominant philosophy in the United States of America, Gary.
Well, I believe the same. And thanks, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Much.